All right, finally I get to tell y'all about the time a prophet set up a showdown between God, the real God, and Baal, the false god.
Let's get ready to rumble!
This video is about the prophet Elijah. He was basically the Old Testament Forrest Gump. The guy ran everywhere he went. And I don't mean he walked, no, he ran.
I was running.
Elijah did a bunch of cool things as a prophet. He had some really cool encounters, one that we're going to key in on this evening. But before we get into that, I got to give you a little bit of context, catch you up where we are. This is after Judges. Israel has been Israel. They have continued to mess up, continued to fail, continued to fall. Solomon came, did great things. He's gone now. Now we're in basically the book of 1 Kings. You can go check that out. And we're catching up. Now the king of Israel is a guy named Ahab.
Let me tell you about Ahab, the Arab.
Not that Ahab, a different one. Ahab was a piece of junk. I'm telling you, he was the worst king Israel ever had. As a matter of fact, the Bible says, and after everything Israel has done and been through, the Bible says, Ahab, the son of Omri, did evil in the sight of the Lord more than all who were before him. Imagine how bad of a king you had to be in order to have that written about you. Did evil more than any other king before him.
You're such a bad person.
I don't mean he was just a bad kid or a bad person or a bad king. No, this guy was a terrible king for Israel, the God's people. He built altars to Baal. He built the Asherah pole. He done everything he could do to just make Israel completely pagan. And of course they fell for it. Israel never saw or faced an idol that they wouldn't worship.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
So anyway, Israel's in a bad place right now, and they're basically a pagan nation at this point. And this guy Elijah shows up out of nowhere, and God tells him, go tell the king that there's going to be a drought. So, as you can imagine, it's not good whenever Elijah tells the king this, and then the word of the Lord comes to Elijah, and he says, hey, man, go hide out, stay by this brook. I'm going to let the brook give you water, and the ravens are going to come and bring you food. So, he goes and he does that, and he's there for a while, and eventually, because there's no rain, obviously, the brook dries up. So, God tells him, hey, go over here to this town. I'm going to provide a widow there with her son, and they'll take care of you. So, Elijah goes over there, and he knocks on this widow's door, and he says, hey, can you give me something to eat and something to drink? And the woman's like, man, we're poor. Times are tough. There's a drought, in case you haven't noticed. So Elijah tells her, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. If you'll do what I'm telling you, then you're never going to run out of oil. You're never going to run out of flour. God's going to take care of everything. So she does it, and it doesn't. They never run out of oil, never run out of flour. Everything is great, and they go like this for a while. Eventually, the widow's son gets sick, and it's bad. Well, Elisha prays to God, prays over the kid. He does his thing, brings the kid back. He's healthy. The woman is like, you truly are a man of God. You truly are a representative of the Lord.
You know what? You're awesome.
So we're into this drought. We're into this famine about 3 years at this point. And Ahab's wife, Jezebel, is absolutely insane. She's crazy.
Oh my God!
She's already had the prophets of God killed, like almost all of them. All the ones who weren't hidden. Just wiped them out. And there's one who was spared for some reason. I guess he's kind of working for Ahab in some way, but he still fears the Lord. And his name's Obadiah.
What kind of stupid name is that?
Obadiah is sent by Ahab to go find a spring, water, something, grass, so we can feed horses, mules, some cows, so they don't have to kill them all. Ahab basically says, here, you cover that area, I'm going to cover this area. We need to find something for these animals to eat. Well, during that time, God tells Elijah, go see the king. Go speak to him, and I'll bring rain to the earth. So while he's out looking, Obadiah comes across Elijah, and Elijah's like, hey, go tell your king that I'm coming and we need to talk. And Obadiah's like, you want me to go tell him Elijah is coming? You realize that he has killed all the prophets. Last time your name was mentioned, you were whisked away and no one could find you. If I go and tell him you're coming and you don't show up, I will die. You don't understand. His wife, Jezebel, is nuts. She will kill me.
She's gonna eat me!
Elijah says, don't worry about it. Tell him I'm coming and I'll be there. So Obadiah goes to Ahab and he tells him Elijah wants to meet. And Ahab gets ready. Whenever Ahab sees Elijah coming, he's like, is that you? The one who's brought all this trouble on Israel? And Elijah's like, I'm not the one who brought all this on Israel. That would be you with your paganism. But if you want to settle this, go ahead. I want you to gather all of Israel to Mount Carmel. And I want you to bring 450 of Baal's prophets. While you're at it, bring 400 of the prophets of the Asherah. You know, the ones that eat at the table of Jezebel, your wife. So he's laying it down here. He's not punking out. He is coming out swinging, and he means business.
Fight for it. You and me.
So Ahab does it. He gathers all of Israel, all those prophets that were asked, and they're gathered there, and Elijah comes out and he speaks. And he says, today is the day that you make a decision. You are not going to try to serve both anymore. If the Lord is God, then that's who you're going to serve. If Baal is God, then that's who you're going to serve, but no more. After Elijah gives his big speech, no one said a word. Everyone was quiet. And Elijah says, I tell you what, I'm one prophet. We got all these prophets from Baal and Asherah and all that. We're going to have a showdown. We're going to have a fight. We're going to see whose God is really God. And, well, it got Western. Elijah says, we're going to make 2 altars, and you guys take an ox and cut it up.
Oh, George, not the livestock.
And make an offering and prepare to make a burnt offering on yours. I'll do the same on mine, and neither one of us will put fire on it. And we'll ask our gods. You ask Baal to come and consume yours with fire, and I'll ask the Lord to come and consume mine. And whichever God answers with fire, they're the true God. And the people literally said, that's a good idea. So
I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it. Let's do it.
the Bible says they started early in the morning and they're crying out to Baal, and around noon, nothing had happened. No answer had come yet. And around noon, they started leaping around the altar, just acting all crazy, doing their thing as was their custom. And nothing's happening. And about this time, Elijah starts trolling these guys like Donald Trump on Twitter.
Can you imagine what they must think of it? That these people are crazy.
He starts saying things like, oh, maybe you should be louder. Call out with a loud voice. He's supposed to be a god, but maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's gone on a trip. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's occupied. Maybe he needs to be woke up or something. Just trolling these guys.
Oh, no, he didn't.
So at this point, they start cutting themselves and stabbing themselves, pouring blood out onto the altar, crying out to Baal. And as you probably guessed, nothing happens. When evening finally gets here, apparently Elijah's had enough. These guys are going to bleed out if he doesn't do something soon.
I'm feeling woozy here.
Apparently they get tired, sit down, and he gets up, basically cracks his knuckles, tells all the Israel guys, and he's like, hey, y'all, come over here.
Maximum effort.
He prepares the altar and fixes it from where it was tore down, puts the ox that he had cut up on the altar, and just for good measure, he tells them, take 4 pitchers of water and pour over this sacrifice. They do it. He looks at it, inspects it, says, pour 4 more. Now, he had dug a trench around the altar, a deep trench, and he inspects it, tells them, pour 4 more. So 3 times they've done this. This is enough water that the whole sacrifice, the whole altar is soaked, so much so that water has filled the trench in. And obviously there is no way, short of a miracle, that this is going to happen. So after all this, Elijah cries out to God. God sends down fire, consumes the altar, consumes the stones, dries up all the water, and just shows out. He shows who he is at this point. And then all of the people are like, he really is God. The Bible actually says, when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Then Elijah says to the people, he says, seize all of the Baal prophets, all of the prophets of Asherah, every one of them. Don't let one escape. And they caught them all and they killed all of them. Now after this, Elijah tells Ahab, you're going to hear preachers usually kind of say this all majestic and everything. He tells them, he says, go up and eat and drink because there's the sound of roaring thunder. But I don't really think he said it that way. After everything that had happened and after this terrible king had done all of the terrible things that he did, and I can see Elijah look at him and say, you need a break. Go have something to eat. Get something to drink. Rain's coming.
It's gotta be biblical.
So while they're up there on the mountain, Ahab's eating, Elijah keeps sending his guy out, says, keep looking out there. Tell me whenever you see something. Keeps on going, not seeing anything. Eventually he comes back and he says there's a rain cloud, but it's way out there. Well, he goes back, he tells Ahab, he says, you might want to get in your chariot and get on back before the rain that's coming prevents that from happening. So Ahab takes off, he's headed out, and he's watching, he's waiting, Elijah's watching, and he's waiting, and finally the Lord's like, all right, you better get on out of here, and the hand of the Lord is on him, and it says he girds himself up, basically he hikes up his robe, and he takes off running, and he outruns Elijah in the chariot to Jezreel, where they were headed. So Ahab goes back home, and he tells his wife, Jezebel, everything that happened. And Jezebel sends a message back to Elijah, and she says, so help me to God, this time tomorrow, I will have killed you. So Elijah runs again. So there we got Elijah out there in the wilderness. He's crying, feeling sorry for himself, asking God to die. And he falls asleep under a bush. Well, eventually an angel wakes him up and he says, get up, eat. And Elijah looks over and there's like some kind of little cake, a Little Debbie or something. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Twinkie.
So Elijah eats it, falls asleep again. And again, an angel comes and says, Elijah, what are you doing here? Get up, eat. You're going to need the strength. You're fixing to go somewhere. After about 2 years of Ahab doing his thing and Jezebel doing her thing, Elijah, he finds Ahab and delivers a message from God. Basically, he tells him that he's going to die and dogs are going to lick up his blood from the street. And by the way, tell your wife she's going to die and the dogs are going to eat her. And all kinds of other stuff he tells him. And it's just terrible. But I got to say, I'm not mad at it.
How do you like them apples?
So for the next 9 years or so, Elijah basically spends his time telling people how they're going to die and why they're going to die. And it's because they chose to follow pagan gods and not trust in the Lord, the God of Israel. And they always wind up being true. And eventually, after service, he is taken up by a fiery chariot in a whirlwind, not dying. He just goes to heaven to be with the Lord. The Bible tells us that his servant or successor, Elisha, would have a double portion of his spirit and be able to do even greater things than Elijah. But I gotta say, it's gonna be hard to beat setting up the battle between Baal and God on the mountain and trolling them the entire time. But anyway, that's the story of Elijah. Go in, look at it, read it yourself. There's some cool things that I just breezed over. Some fun stuff there. I'm fixing to go inside. It's late. I'm tired. The heat takes it out of you. We live down here in South Louisiana. It's incredible. You open the door to outside in the middle of the day. It's like checking cornbread. Stay prayed up. Changing some stuff. You see, I painted the office. We're trying to make it happen. Y'all like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys want to see. Tell me other stories you guys want to hear. We got some different stuff coming. But I gotta go. Got stuff happening though. Things are coming. Thank y'all. God bless.